Pencil Power. Why, hello there, art adventurers. It has been a while, and I haven't been drawing as much, but I wanted to get back into the swing of things, so I thought it might be fun to do a sketch practice diary while I talk you guys through how I'm going to be practicing creating these anime faces. So anime is always something that I've enjoyed. Well, at least a handful of animes have been very influential to me. Dragon Ball Z being the main one. But I've always appreciated the anime style, but it's never been my main style. And but I've always wanted to be able to draw in that style. So lately I've been wanting to study especially like the eyes and how the faces are simplified. So I've been working on doing some studies, and I thought you'd kind of walk you guys through my process in how I've done that. So I'm going to break it down into looking at all the different features of the face one by one. And so actually even before I would do something like this, I think that like starting with this method where you lay down the structure of the face, and I've done some videos already on how I go ahead and put the structure of the face down and everything like that. Definitely it's a good method and it's a good way to do it, but I find that actually sometimes when I'm studying from a piece of artwork that I really like, I'm actually not going to start here because it puts a lot of pressure to get all the pieces in the right place at the right time. And a lot of times things are just like a little bit off, they don't feel quite right. And so an easier way to do it, I'm just kind of warming up while I'm chatting with you guys by drawing this face. And all these references are from that FF Heroes. It's a Fire Emblem game on that's free on iOS. I don't know if it's available on other platforms, but they have a whole section where you can look at all the heroes you've collected, and there's a few versions of each of the heroes that you can look at. So I took a bunch of screenshots of the pieces of art that I like the most. And I thought I'd do some studies specifically on the faces and the eyes, and kind of just, talk you guys through the process that I would go through to study this. So I wouldn't actually start at this point personally. I would, I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to study, and though there's not like one right or wrong answer, but I would actually like to start just by studying the individual features one by one. So instead of doing something like this and kind of going through and then being like, okay, well, what's wrong with, not wrong, but what did I get inaccurate, or where could I improve to be more gentle on myself? Um, Instead of doing it that way, I'm going to focus on one part of the body at a time. So let's start with the eyes. So here I just want to kind of finish up this sketch, and then hopefully we can go in and look at things in more detail, and then come back to doing a sketch like this and see if I've made any improvements. So here's what I would kind of be able to do at this point right now, and I could always refine this. So I'm using a few little methods. Like right now I'm using the jigsaw puzzle piece, or I call it the puzzle piece method, which you can find a video on here, where I'm just kind of looking at the basic shapes and putting them in without overthinking it. And then, so this is how I'm getting like the armor portion. But I didn't really use that on the face. So I can tell that this face is a little off, so we'll come back to this. But let's look right now and just start to copy the eyes. And it doesn't even matter so much the proportions and stuff, I would say at first, but we're really just trying to get a good idea of the angles, like what's overlapping what, where are there thicker lines. I'm not even going to do both eyes at the same time. I'm going to do one at a time and kind of just see what's going on there. I'm copying each piece, not overthinking it. It's more about observation at this point rather than the actual execution or the final product. So here I'm seeing that, for instance, there's a small line here and it gets overlapped by the eyebrow, which has a like a pointed shape on either side, and it comes pretty far in from where the eye is, so it's coming in over on this direction. There's a little patch of shade I'm seeing here. There's a patch of shade under the eyelid right there. I'm just kind of going through and I'm seeing like, okay, it doesn't actually connect right here, so we'll leave that open. And there's a little bit there's a bright spot of light right there. So cool. And I think you can see that this eye is coming out like kind of nicely on its own. But of course, if I was to draw the rest of the face, I probably will find that I've gotten the angles wrong or something. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm kind of going to pay attention. Okay, so the angle between the eyes is going down like this. Just approximate that it comes about this far. And I'm also kind of looking at, okay, so what happens next here? I can see there's a slight fold in the eyelid. The eye comes in very close, but there's a small space here. And it doesn't connect again. There's like a little spot right here where it doesn't connect. So I'm going to leave that open. I've got a bright spot in the upper left corner again. And the iris actually kind of fades out. So instead of being a direct circle on both of them, it has a soft edge. So that's kind of cool. Oh, and I actually really like the effect that has. So see, I'm learning some small tips which I will bring into my own drawings, my own original characters, and stuff like that in the future. But for now, I'm not going to worry too much about it. And then from here, I could just continue to focus on eyes. So actually, let's go ahead and do that. Let's take it one element, one part of the face at a time, so that we can really learn something and focus in. So now I'm going to look at the eyes here. So what have we got? I'm going to notice again that the eye has a thicker area on the outside. So there is, like, I know on female characters the eyelashes tend to get thick here on the outside, but here for this male character it also works. So, and it doesn't look like he's wearing, you know, some kind of makeup or anything. So that's an interesting thing to note. Now I'm going to remember that kind of paying attention to the spacing in general, noticing that there is a slight fold above, again hinted at, and that the eyebrow, when it's more intense, comes up over the eye itself, not just over that fold. So let's go ahead and indicate that. And see, and actually it comes up quite straight, which I kind of like. So my inclination, one thing you'll notice while doing these kind of studies is that you might say like, oh, actually I wanted to curve the eyebrow like this. But in here, it's actually going straight up. So that's something to remember that I can do differently that might bring more of that style that I like. Of course, I'm going to end up picking and choosing which parts of this I like, but I also like how the iris is a little bit hazy. And I'm also noticing that if I was like coloring it, there's a brighter spot right here. So it would be something like, here I can actually use red, why not? I'm going to bring in some red here. And so this part is like a darker red, right? And then the iris is like a really around the edges, and the iris is almost the same color of this really dark red. And I'm going to make it a little bit, not the exact same, what is it, hue. I made it slightly pinker. And then the iris is like that. And then there's a beautiful light red. And since I made the shadows pinker, I'm going to make the light spot warmer. So I'm assuming that there's a warm light source, and I'll have to make a video. If you guys want to see a video on the basic way I like understand and break down light so that your shadows and lights don't look flat, I can do that. And so that's pretty cool. Just let me know in the comments. And actually, I think it's a little more saturated. No, that's actually all right. It's a little more, maybe more light, and it's actually maybe pinker. I'm not going to get too detailed. I'm just kind of learning now how this is laid out on a basic level. Cool. Let's go back to our bluish color for the outline. And I'm going to notice that there's a slight furrow in the brows there, and the eyes are actually at a slight upward angle from each other. So coming here, again, I'm not going to worry about too much the spacing and all that. I'm seeing that this comes up at a much more extreme angle than this guy, as it's on the far side of the face. And we'll have the same outside edge here is thicker. They have some eyebrows, and I don't know if I'll color this one in because it's basically the same as the one on the left. So I don't think I'll go in and do the red color. So I'll just kind of do what I've learned, make the iris kind of soft, make this part right here in the bottom right corner lighter, and then come in and just take out a dot, a pretty bright dot here for a little shine. And that actually looks pretty cool. I'm digging the way that this is turning out. So right now, let me do one more, and then I'm going to draw my own eye, my own anime eye. And I'll do this process for all three of the main features, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And I don't want this video to go on too long, so this might be a two-parter where I'll go into the shape of the head and the hair in the next one. But for now, let's focus on the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. So here we're looking at the eyes. What can I learn from this angle? Well, first off, the angle is coming in the other way. Head's tilting that way. We've got 3 lines creating the upper lid. And again, I'm not like worrying too much about proportion or anything. I'm more focusing on what I'm seeing. I want to see the details. I want to understand them. I want to think about them. And I honestly think that talking out loud helps with that. I think it was, is it Frank Frazetta or Jack Kirby? One of these big time artists who is very well respected and, you know, a giant in the industry, or however you want to put it, was known to speak out loud while he was drawing. So to be like, okay, and then, I don't know what he would say, but we're like kind of thinking what I'm saying here. It's like, okay, this part is thicker on the outside, the top lid is thicker, and then we've got the iris looking over to the side. He's looking pretty, his brow is pretty furrowed. You know, like I'm not exactly sure, but just in general, talking, I'm not sure how this other artist did it, I'm referencing, but in general, speaking while you're drawing actually helps you gain some clarity into what you're doing. I think it engages more of your mind. It forces you to be focused in what you're doing and not be thinking about something different because you're speaking, because you can draw and kind of be spacing out thinking about something else or not being super focused. When you're talking about what you're drawing, all your senses are keyed into the drawing itself. So here I am looking a bit at the spacing and I'm saying, okay, this part is going to line up down there because the bottom looks like not perfectly lined up. This one's actually coming up a little bit like that, like a little bit more of this angle than the other eye, but like the bottom of the eyelids are more or less lining up. And then we've got, and noticing that this part is left empty here. I'm going to erase that out a little bit. So I like these places where the eyes don't connect to the, where they don't like, the line isn't complete. Like it's not a whole, you know, the eyes aren't done like this. Would be with the eyeball, with the, what is this? Iris and cornea, or whatever this part of the eye, middle part is called. It's not like completely enclosed, but rather we've got something like that, and this part, like there's some parts that aren't fully connected. And it seems like the top lines tend to be like one unbroken piece up here on the top lid, but then the bottom has like a break in a couple spots. So that's a cool thing to note. And then there's a little bit of a point there where the eyelashes are coming together. So here's like a little version of my own, but we're going to get to that. Let me finish drawing this last eye here, and then I will try to draw my own eye randomly to get an idea of what I've learned and apply it. And actually, like if I was just practicing on my own and you know, the length of this video had no, you know, wasn't a factor, I might actually study a couple more eyes before doing this to get an idea beyond just this one eye shape. But I think that I've already learned a few things, and it'll be fun to try to apply it. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these guys up here a little bit, and in this area I'm going to draw my own eye and see how it comes out. So one thing I'm noticing is that they're all at some kind of slight angle, not an extreme angle, but a slight angle. So that's going to make things a little more dramatic, I think. Now, kind of like this angle here, because it's somewhat neutral, but it still has a little bit of energy to it. So I'm going to kind of start with that line. And maybe I'll just make a couple circles to be like, okay, that's where they'll basically fit in. So the one thing I'm noticing that I like is that the edge has this, outer edge has that kind of thick eyelash thing going on, and that there are pretty, like, what is the word? Definitive. Like the changes in angles aren't like rounded like that. Like there's a straight line. So I don't actually think, I think I'm rounding it a little more than I'd like. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. I'm also noticing that the outer edge here, I'm like, this doesn't look right to me because the outer edges here are higher. So let me go ahead and change that and do something like that. And then we have the bottom here. And you'll probably see that this eye might not look as cool and dramatic as the ones that I was drawing from, but we'll see. And then let's give them this pretty straight eyebrow like we talked about. And this one I remember is actually comes up at a more extreme angle a lot of times, so let's go ahead and do that, though not all the time. And we've got a little bit of light in the bottom right and a very much shinier part in the top left. So keep the much shinier white part in the top left, kind of hazy or not completely defined pupils. The bottom right has it's a little bit brighter. So this is pretty cool. It's definitely coming along. And, you know, for a small amount of practice, where I've definitely made some improvements. And I noticed that, you know, this inside corner is rarely lined in, so I'm leaving that open too. Oops, let's make this a little smaller. Leaving that open. All right, cool. So I think that turned out all right. I'm trying to remember a few other tips. So there was like, I remember this eyebrow came in a lot further, and there's a shadow that was going like this. I'm trying not to look at my other references. I'm trying to remember more what I did before looking at the other references. But it's not like cheating to look at the other references. It's just I'm trying to like see what I've been able to commit to memory at this point. I actually don't remember having shadows, looking at shadows on this eye. So that's all right. I think that kind of has given me the idea of how to do this eye. And now I'm going to take that and compare it to one other character. So let's see, who do we have next? All right, let's do a female character and see how things might be the same or different. So here we've got, this is much more rounded instead of the sharp shapes. So that might be usually softer shapes, rounder shapes come off as more feminine. And of course, these might be done by different artists, so they're not always going to follow the same conventions. Her pupil is slightly more defined, but there is an area of like much sharper highlight, and then darker area, and then in another corner there's a lighter area that's not 100% highlight. There's a little bit of like there's a break here, and I'm not sure what's going on there. I think this is the eye, and then there's a little bit of an eyelash coming off there. That's my interpretation of that. So that's pretty cool. It's a good little tip. And so what I've done is pushed the eye all the way to the edge, but there's a little bit of white there. And I also noticed that there's an unbroken line here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, noticing that there's a little bit of white on the edge. And that might help. And then there's this kind of shape right here, which I do like. But the whole part here is thicker, much thicker than I'm inclined to do. I think that's one of the big things when you're sketching, is to notice what your natural inclination is and see if that's something you want to keep. You know, that's a positive thing that's contributing to your style and the look that you're going for. And when, you know, your inclination is to do something that's actually, oh, that's why it doesn't look the way I'm attempting to get it to look. So this is pretty thick, and then it's sharp there on the edge. I think that's good enough right now. There seems to be a slight curl going up. Cool. And then her eyes actually seem much further spaced than the male character's eye. And so there's an interesting thing too, where it's not just like this. Noticing it goes like that, and then there's a kind of thing like that going on. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that in mind as I draw this eye here. So there's a further spacing. You got something going on like that. And then again, there's this, and there's a slight angle downwards again, so it's not just completely horizontal, so that's a commonality, which I have a feeling will be a general thing to give. You know, having just a subtle tilt in the head, I think really gives a lot more character to the character. Like, gives a lot more of an attitude than if the head is completely horizontal. And again, we have the same thing where there's a lighter area on the bottom, and on the top where there's probably more shadow, it's heavier. And then here, actually, it's closed in this middle part. Usually it's open there. This one's closed there and open right here. Cool. And I think that's it. That's really, you know, I'm pretty happy with how these eyes have turned out. So we've drawn a fair number of anime eyes. I'm going to look back at this one and see, okay, is there anything I would have done different? Did I learn anything that I would have changed in this eyeball? I think maybe, what if I brought it down like that, using with the further eye where it kind of like comes down, and actually, yes, I do kind of like that a little more. I'm basically just adding more understanding, more possibilities to my repertoire, and I'm seeing that these eyes actually ended up closer together than most any of these. So maybe that's a tendency I also have, is to make the eyes a little too close together based on the style that I'm looking for. So let's just move it over and see if that makes a difference. I'm also noticing that this further eye is actually much smaller. This one also has that and it looks fine. This one also a little bit, but they're not smaller in the height really, only in the width. That's another thing I'm noticing now. So if I was to, and usually I'll just redraw this. So yeah, let me go ahead and just redraw it to get some extra practice. So what can I do differently now that I've kind of had a couple more insights? We'll make the eye a little bit further away. We'll give it this kind of downward thing. Okay, do something like this. Have the little fold there. And the thing too is not to be discouraged if you're like, oh man, I thought I would make a great drawing, but it's not looking right. Because you are learning things, and it's hard to know what you're learning in until it's in retrospect. So you got to trust that your practice, there are more and less effective ways to practice, of course, but just the fact that you're practicing and you're thinking about something is going to bring some kind of improvement, even if you just learn what you don't want to do, or you just start to develop a keener eye. Because you might notice like, oh, I don't like the way this looks, and it's actually because your eye has adjusted and become more sharp, more perceptive at the mistakes. While this eyes would have looked great to me at some point, now I'm like, oh no, they don't look great because this, and that, because I have a more practiced eye. Like that eye looked like it was looking off in the wrong direction a little bit. So I've definitely noticed this happening with all sorts of art training. And I think I'm going to leave that at that. Very cool. So I want to go through the nose and the mouth, which should be a little easier. The eyes are more complicated. And then we're going to go ahead and redraw this and see if we can, or a character in that same vibe, and see if we can, if it feels like there's been any improvement since the very beginning. Alright, so the nose is basically going to be this, but I want to see if there's any nuances. And there's a tiny, tiny, tiny dot there. Okay, it's a little bit darker, I'm noticing, than the rest of the face. And then right here there's a light spot, but I can't really indicate that without. And then it looks like there's actually a bit of an indication of the bridge of the nose there. So something like that. Cool. Let's leave it at that. And then go to the next one. We've got, on this one, it's got more of this kind of a vibe, where this one's actually more concurve, I guess, like that, like that. Here we've got a little more convex, so it's going to be like that and like that. So it's interesting that the same character can have both. The nose can be drawn in both ways. And then this guy, he's got some wrinkles. The nose is wrinkling a little bit because his brows are furrowed. And then the eyebrow comes down all the way here to the bridge of the nose. The inside of the eyebrow comes all the way down there. Maybe I'll put this one too so I can get an idea of how it relates to the eyes for when I'm drawing that. And then I see that the eye kind of comes something like that. Let's separate this a little bit. This doesn't look like he's got a nose coming out of his other eye. And then the shadow comes here. So actually the nostril I made maybe a little too close is what I'm noticing now that I put in the shadow. Nostril's actually more out here. So that's an interesting thing. I probably have a tendency to put the nostril in closer. And look how subtly the nostril is indicated, and it actually kind of has a slight downward angle like that. So that's another thing where I'll put a lot more emphasis on the nostril than this artist is here. And then for this one, look how far away the nostril is and how, so I'm noticing things are at an upward angle like this. You know, the general face is doing something like this. That's a little extreme. But it's cool because the mouth doesn't indicate that. It's actually just how high up the nose is that really indicates that the most, rather than anything else. And then there's also, so you'll see that the bottom of the nose is longer when it's tilted upwards. The nostril is so small and tilting upwards too, so that also gives you the idea that you're looking up at this character's face. And then the eye is actually, see, like all the way down here almost. So as here, the eye is about, the bottom of the eye starts around there. Here the bottom of the eye starts almost right here, and there's a little bit of a indication that this part is overlapping the other side of the other part of the bridge of the nose. I have a feeling the sketch practice diary video is getting a lot longer than I intended, which is good because it means I'm practicing more. I hope you guys are kind of drawing along and doing your own thing. So it's kind of like we're hanging out and drawing. That's my intention here with these, with all the videos. I hope that you're drawing along, and some of them I do try to make them shorter just to give a tip, you know, to keep things concise. But in these sketch practice diaries, I like to really just take my time and show you guys the practice process and kind of talk through it. because I learn a lot from it, and I hope from just hearing myself and kind of thinking out loud. And I hope that you guys also find some value in that. Cool. So that's good. I think we've got the nose on this guy. So let me draw a nose. Let me draw one, and it's actually like super simple. Something like this could be the nose with like a little indication of the nostril, and then a small indication of the bridge of the nose, which would then go into the eyebrows. That would go all the way up to the bridge of the nose, I've noticed. And then to put in a rough idea for the eye, as in the way I've learned it. But what I'm doing here, which I've noticed, which I don't like, is that I've made the eyes straight. I made the nose straight. I haven't put any curve to the face. So let's do one more where there's a curve, maybe like that. So the nose will do something like this, let's say. With just a slight dot there again. Do some shading. So actually I think I made the dot too close. Remember, that's kind of my tendency, is to make the nostril closer than this artist would. And also, if this would be if you're looking up at the nostril, since we're kind of a little more at a downward angle here, I think I'll put it like that. And then have the eyes coming in at this angle. Cool. It's definitely not perfect, but like I said, I'm learning a lot. And the thing is, after I come back, after you take a break and let your brain build some new neurons, as you which are actually what happens when you sleep. So sleep is really important if when you're learning anything. Then you'll find that you'll come back stronger than ever with your pencil empowered beyond your wildest dreams. So one thing I'm remembering too is that these don't all connect. So let me actually go ahead and just do that. That's cool. Okay. Yeah. I think that's coming along. So again, we drew one of each of the noses, and then I did my own version of the nose. And here, remember, this was actually a little bit darker too, in general, which I like. Cool. And then see how I curved this? Another tendency of mine that I'm becoming aware of. So I'm curious what your guys' tendencies are. Do you have the same ones? So here instead we're doing a straight eyebrows. And I like that a lot better. Awesome. Let's do the girl's nose, and then we'll do the mouth. So the girl's nose comes in as just a little boop, and that's it. And then there's some shading right above. There's no nostril or anything. Cool. Let's see this lady over here. What are we looking at? We've got another just super simple something like that. It's a little bit at this angle, you see? It's not, so if the face is like this part is shorter than this part, okay? And then there's light underneath. So again, the shadow is on top of the nose. And that's it. We're just looking at two angles of hers. Cool. So let's draw one more nose. Just kind of freehand. So if I was to make a face like this, kind of looking, so we've got an angle where you can focus on creating the angle of the eyes. Could do something like that. I'm not sure if I'm doing a male or female character. Just kind of combining some of the things I've learned, experimenting, put a little shade on top. And that's it. So if this one was more on the feminine side, maybe make the eyes rounder with the thicker upper, bigger iris, not irises, is that the whole thing? There's the cornea, I should learn the name of that. And then also make the eyes wider set. That's one thing I've noticed. I kind of gave her a more masculine nose here. It's a little more defined. Give then the other one. And then I remember there was that little space. I'm kind of like redoing basically exactly how I saw it to get some extra practice. Repetition is super important in practice. Okay, cool. And so if I want to make the nose a little more feminine, let's say I'll just actually erase. There we go. Make the nose a little bit smaller and erase the nostril. Cool. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Great. And then I would actually sharpen this up, but yeah. Kind of know what I'm trying to do here. It's always good to practice it as if you're trying to create a final product, to really challenge yourself to push your limits. As is the theme with so many animes, is to push your limit and expand to the next level of your awesomeness. Something like that. Alright, great. Finally, we'll do the mouth. This should be pretty straightforward. And then we'll draw a quick face, and then we'll call it an evening. So we can start with her this time. Why not? Boom. I'm noticing that there's a little bit, it's a little thicker on the left side. There's almost like a little something going on like that. And then there's a small line indicating the bottom lip ever so slightly. And then actually it looks like there's a slight upturn here in the corner to give that smile. So the two corners are a little more emphasized, and there's ever so slight bit on the bottom lip emphasized. And it looks like it might be that the bottom lip is kind of like that. So this second line over here just indicates that ever so slightly. It's almost harder to do when it's subtle, but let's see her other one. Okay, this is a completely different mouth expression. But again, I'm noticing that it's at an angle. There's a darker spot here. You can see her upper teeth, but not her lower. And it's actually not connected in that one corner. It doesn't quite touch. So I think that's like one thing that I'm learning is like not to close all of the shapes necessarily. You know, you can keep them open. And it creates this kind of soft feel. So let's see our friend over here, his mouth. So his mouth is completely closed. Like, I mean, there's no, you know, they didn't leave like the bottom of the lip open here or something like that. It's actually fully one shape. And there's a little bit of a curve there. An indication of the teeth that has a little bit of bumpiness to it. Almost makes him look like he's got some fangs, but it's much more subtle. Oh no, actually, no, I'm noticing that it's, since we're looking down, there's that upward curve. And so what we're seeing is the teeth like that from a downward angle. So that's actually helping. Okay, there's some nuance there because it goes up and then it comes down like this. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm seeing here. I'm not sure how to explain that from a perspective angle, but it's okay. For now I can copy it, and as I continue to expand my art skills, I'll come to understand why it works. So I think it does work, and so that's the most important thing. And then again, the bottom lip is indicated with a thin line. And his bottom lip is actually a lot thicker than the female characters, which is interesting. I would have expected the opposite. Again, here we have this similar thing, but instead of, there isn't really like a triangle shape there, it just kind of goes in and comes out. And then you've got a break there. This is the typical break, so the teeth aren't all one line. And the strongest line is out here where that triangle would be. And coming down. Another interesting thing is that the top lip overlaps, and that these are coming in at converging angles. So that's cool. I'm going to keep that in mind. And then finally, we've got his little smile, which looks like it's 3 lines. Looks like it's basically 1, 2, 3, 3. and they are a little bit thicker on the outside than the inside. And there's a soft line for his lower lip. Kind of got a bit of a shading aspect to it. 1, 2, 3. So I'll draw my own mouth now. I want to indicate the outer edges more. Maybe emphasize what I've learned, like take it a little more extreme. Okay, something like that. For the other mouth, remember that the shapes converge, because I might have a tendency, so that's pretty cool, like that, and the top lip comes over, and then indicate over here on the bottom lip, something like that. Cool. So let's go back to the first drawing and give it a go. So this actually looks okay to me. I was harder on myself before than I am now, but let's see what we can do given the practice session we've just had. See if I can come up with a face that looks nicer. So I haven't really studied the shape of the head yet, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I'm just going to lay something in that's pretty straightforward. Okay, cool. I'm just going to leave it like that. Maybe give a little bit of indication of the armor. Alright, so the head has something to sit in. And then I don't think I'm going to copy this character exactly. So again, I haven't done the hair. I'm kind of using him as a general reference. And then I'll draw in some just, make up my own kind of anime eyes and mouth to create a character. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to remember is that the eyes are at an angle. I actually might start with the nose because that helped me place the eyes, I remember. So I'm going to do the bridge of the nose. And a simple nose like that. A little dot for the nostril. And a little shading to darken the nose. Those are the main things that I remember. And then the mouth, let's just do a smiling mouth. I remember the middle line was the least emphasized, so the outer edge lines and are a little more. And there's a bottom lip line. This looks, happier rather than smirkier, but this is my own anime character in this style, or basically using what I've learned. Give this eyebrow more extreme. Okay, and then this eyebrow less extreme of an angle. And keep it straight, avoid my tendency to curve it. This one looks a little bit too thick maybe, so let's thin that out. I'm already much happier with how this is coming along and really having an anime style. And then I remember this corner came up more, it was higher up, rather than this corner was a little bit, comes down like that. So now he doesn't look so happy because his eyebrows are down, so it's interesting to see how, the character evolves to have a personality of his own. And I can leave most of this open. I'm going to leave this bottom corner open, and you know what, on this side, I think because he's going to be looking over like this, so I'm going to fill in this corner and leave this bit open. I'm kind of experimenting with the part that I leave open, but I just know from the studies here that I do want to leave one little segment. And then here I'm going to leave a little bit. See the white of the eye right there? I'm leaving that open because I remember that from the female character, which is something that I liked. So let me zoom in a little bit. Get a slightly smaller brush size so that I can come in here. And I actually like the soft pupil vibe. We're going to have the highlight, soft pupil. This part's dark. This part's light. Something like that. Let's do that on this side. Remember to keep the one part. And then actually this one I might just shade it all in and then erase out a little highlight. And just one really sharp, small dot. Don't want it right in the middle of the pupil. I don't remember that being the case. There we go. Something like that. Not quite. There we go. Cool. And I actually really like how this turned out. And I was like, okay, well now if I was going to continue to study, I can see, there's 2 bumps on the face here. And then it curves down. So this is what I'll leave for a part 2. For the next sketch practice diary on anime. So, I'm actually seeing that the chin should be a little bit further back. So in the next one, I'm going to study the face shapes and the hair and the neck. I think those are the 3 that I will focus on. But I think I was able to create a pretty cool anime style character that's actually much, has a much better anime style. I guess also I might look at the ears next time too. It has a much cooler anime style than most of the drawings that I do, because that's not my forte. All right. I hope that this was helpful and has imbued you, unlocked and unleashed some more of that pencil power.